So first, when you launch into Canva, you get a start screen like this, and you can create a new design by clicking the button here. You can search here for whatever sort of template you want, or if you go down here, you'll see more categories as well as all the designs you've also created. So for example, if I come up here, I could type in Instagram if I wanted to create something related to Instagram. It's going to start finding those pre-made template assets that Instagram has, and it's going to show me choices here. I could also find same thing if I go down here and I start looking through the different features. So there's Instagram, there's Facebook posts, there's posters. The same thing if I come over here to create a design, it's going to give me this big long list of all these categories that Canva just has ready to go. And so you choose any one of these, or you click here and you can even create a project with custom dimensions. But so once you know what you want to create, it's just a simple matter of clicking on it, and Canva will launch a project, and then you're in the project interface. Now, once you're in the project interface, you're going to see this menu on the left, which gives you all the different elements within Canva. So templates, photos, elements, text, videos, backgrounds, uploads, and folders. And then you're going to see more choices here based on what you have selected here. So as I select different things here, you'll notice that this changes. Now this is your actual project work area over here. And then up top, you're going to get some different things. Everything on the right is sort of universal, and things on the left will change based on what you have going on in the project interface. Okay, so are you with me? All right. Now let's move forward and go through some of these elements just to show you all the little tricks and things that are going to maybe trip you up if you don't know what to do. But once you know these little tricks, you're going to work efficiently with Canva. It really is an intuitive program. Okay, so let's just start with this little left menu here and work our way down just to go over some of the different things you can add to your project. And then after that, we will look at what are some of the tricks for moving things around and things like that. So let me return to the top here, and we will start at this templates tab. So templates are basically pre-made designs that are a part of Canva. This is one of the things that makes Canva great, is they have so many projects and designs that can serve as good starting points, so you don't have to start from zero. So if you come in under this templates tab, right now I have this category selected, but let me just back out of this. By default, it's probably going to look like something like this, where you see a whole bunch of different categories. So event poster, advertising, school poster, photo poster. So if you see a category that makes sense, you can go farther in there by clicking see all and see even more templates that fit that category. You could also search up here and search for a particular theme that you want to get under and see those designs. So anyways, these are just pre-made designs, and if you just click on the design, it's going to automatically populate over here as your starting point for your project. Of course, you're still going to come in here and change text. You can change the design, so it's all editable once you put it in there. It just gives you a starting point, right? Okay, and so if you click on any template here, it's going to replace that template on the active page. So if I click on this one, it's just going to keep overwriting, so you don't have to drag anything over. All you have to do is click once on the template you want, and it's going to overwrite what's ever over here. Now, if I wanted to have a new page here, I could click on a new page. And then, of course, if I click on a template, it's going to populate that new page with the template that I choose. And I still have that other template up there. So these are templates. They're just great starting points. So if you find something that makes sense, you don't have to start from zero. Of course, you can. But if you find something that you like, you can go ahead and add it in there. Next tab is the Photos tab. And so hopefully that's pretty self-explanatory. This is where you find photos. So once you have templates, for example, if I don't like this picture here, once I have my Photos tab, I can just go in and drag and drop new photos, right? So the Photos tab, same thing, you can search up here. You can find all different kinds of photos. They're free ones. There are other ones that are premium elements that you sometimes have to pay for. We'll go over that in a minute. Okay, so that's photos. Now, I'm not going to have time to go through all of these in detail, otherwise this will not be a quick start challenge. It'll become a longer challenge, but just know these are where you find the other elements that you can add to Canva. So under elements, they have a lot of vector artwork within different categories. You can add charts, you can add grids and frames within which you can then populate with pictures. So they're little placeholders where you can add, and then you put the content within that placeholder. So you have that, you have lots of vector artwork, things like that, all under this Elements tab here. Then you have text. That's pretty self-explanatory. That's where you can add text to your project. And then videos. Videos is relatively new to Canva, but yes, you can add video. You can trim video. You can put different video clips together. You can now do some cool stuff with video in Canva, and you find it all under this Videos tab. Then you have backgrounds, and so backgrounds, let me just show you backgrounds real quick since they are a little different. So if I add a background to my page, this is actually a background here. Backgrounds can be color or they can actually be an image. So let me just show you right now. Once you have a background, when you create a new page, it's going to carry over that background. So if I go under background, I will find things that are beyond just regular colors. So you have these different patterns. So if I were to take this one here and just click on it to bring it in as my background, which there we go. Then when I click a new page, it's going to carry over the background. So background is exactly what you think it is. It's a background element. It's the very back layer of your design. So in other words, it's locked in there. You can sometimes size it up a little bit, but it still takes over the whole screen. So you're just changing the scale. So in other words, if I click in on this one, a double click and get in there, I can do a couple things. I can move it around, but it's going to stay taking up the whole page. And anytime I create a new page, it's going to copy over the background. So that's backgrounds. And so these are all the different elements you can add to Canva. And then the last couple tabs here, uploads, are just where you upload files. So if you have your own pictures, your own elements that you want to add in there, you do that under uploads. Folders, depending on whether you have the free or the paid version of Canva, you have some number of folders where you can store your pictures, you can store your projects, things like that. So that's folders. And then under this more tab, I won't get into everything under here, but you can connect Canva with lots and lots of different platforms now. So you can connect to your Google Drive, your Dropbox. So if you have things stored in there that you want to work with in Canva, you can do all of that under that more tab. Okay, so I know we rushed through that really quickly. We are going to slow it down a little bit now, but I just wanted to get through all of this. So now we can start going over the tips once you actually start working with elements in your design that are really going to help you get out of the box quickly. Make sure you avoid some of those pitfalls, some of those time sinks, and you just work efficiently in Canva. So we're going to start all of that in the next challenge video, and I will see you there. Okay, let's keep going with the Canva Quick Start Challenge. We're going to now start looking at actually working with photos and different elements in your design. How do you resize these elements? How do you position these elements? We're going to give you all the right tricks so you can work very efficiently. Okay, let's dive right in. Okay, so I have two things on screen right now. I have this shape here, which is just a rectangle. And then we also have this picture here of this horse. And so let's start talking now about some of the basics, but then also what are these little tricks that are just going to save you a lot of time. Okay, first thing here, when you click on an element, a lot of times you're going to see these corner points here, and then also these center points, which you see on the side. So if I drag in from any corner, it's starting to resize my element, so it's scaling it up and down. And then it looks like I'm resizing here, but it's actually doing a little something different, which you're going to notice it's not going to matter with a rectangle, but it is going to matter here with this horse picture. So this is a picture. So same thing, drag from the corner, up and down, right? Scaling up and down. However, if I start to drag from one of the sides, I see that now what it's actually doing is cropping my frame. So you notice that the horse picture, it's staying the same dimensions in terms of the horse itself there, right? But what it's doing is it's cropping the frame. So in other words, you can control what portion is showing. And you do that with these side handles here. And then if you want the whole thing to scale up and down, that's when you use the corner points. So corner points for scaling up and down. And then these points here are sort of for cropping the image. Now you can also double click and it'll take you in here, and then you're moving your picture around. So double click to get in that frame, and then once you have what you want, you can just double click to get out or click anywhere and you're back out. Now, once you have any of these, with both of these, you can just click on it, and once it's selected, you'll see this blue rectangle box around it, and then you can move it around. Same thing with a picture, click on it, you can move it around. And you'll also notice this rotational handle here, and you can use that rotational handle to go ahead and change the rotation if you want. Now let me just show you one more important example where resizing is going to come into play. So I'm just going to go under my Elements tab, and I will grab out a line. So if you come down here, eventually you're going to see this lines. So if you click on See All, you can see a whole bunch of different lines that you might want to add with your project. I'll just take this first default line there, and I'm going to put that in. And I'll also go down on my Text tab here, and I'll just add a heading in here. So here is my heading, and I will move it up on the page. Now, of course, you can underline headings with this little button here, and so you can add something like that. But what if I want to take total control? So I'm going to get rid of that and get rid of that. You may want to add your own line and be able to style your own line. So that's where we would go under lines and add something like this. Here's the problem. If I just try to take this line and I just try to position it under here or resize it, so I could drag it up and say, okay, I've lined up that side. Now I'm going to drag this down and I'm going to position this side here. Okay, what if I want to change the thickness of this line? If I scale it up and down, the line changes in terms of thickness, but what if I wanted it to stay this thick? Or what if I wanted it to be thinner than it is now when I get to this? Am I just stuck with whatever it happens to be when I size it down to the width I want? No, you're not stuck. This is again where these quarter points and these side handles are going to come into play. So let me show you what I mean. When you have a line, to control sort of the thickness of the line, just use these points and get that first to what you want. So if I wanted it to be a thick line, let's just say I wanted something really thick, so I could do this first and I could get it really thick. Then to control the actual width across your screen, that's when you use these side handles. So now with these two handles working in unison, you can really get whatever size line you want and then position it wherever you want. So again, once again, if I wanted this to be a thin line, I'll drag down first, get it nice and thin, then I will drag out, get the width across the screen that I want, and then position it as needed. So it's very crucial, these corner points and then these side points working in unison a lot of the times is going to be how you get things precisely the way you want them. If you just try to do one, you may get stuck. But if you remember you can use both of these in different ways, then you're really going to be able to get to what you want. Now, one more thing I will mention with this, as I start to drag this down really thin, maybe I do want a really thin line, well, I can't quite get to that side handle anymore. That's when you have to remember that you can zoom down here using this little zoom menu at the bottom. A lot of times you will just have this set to fit and it's going to fit your design on page. But if you do want to come in tighter, that's when sometimes you're going to get that little side handle back. So if you lose that and you can't quite get in there and it's only giving you these corner handles, just get in a little closer, use this zoom, you'll be able to find what you want. So that's just how you would come in here, change the thickness of a line. You're going to use these control handles, get the thickness the way you want, and then size it the way you want. So again, size it, let's make it thicker, and then you can do whatever you want. Okay, so hopefully that's helpful. Let me just go back under elements. I'm just going to grab and add a rectangle to my page. I'll make it smaller, and then I'll go under my text tab, and I will just add some text to the page. So I'll just click right up here to add this text. Now I think I just clicked on it twice and my computer is running a little slow. So oh, there we go, heading. Okay, so now I've got some text and now I have this rectangle. All right, so resize this rectangle out. I will take my text, I will drag it up there. Now you may have noticed as I'm dragging things around the screen, you do start to see these little helpful guides. And so one thing Canva is good at is it displays these smart guides, and then a lot of time if you're close to something like the center of the page or another object, you'll feel a little snap and you'll see that guide and it clicks right into position. So Canva has this smart snapping that helps you move and position things on the page. So if I wanted to get this rectangle exactly centered in the page, I would come in until I see that guide and I would drag it down, and then boom, I get those crosshairs. I have it exactly snapped to the center of the page. So just look for those little snapping things. They are very helpful, and you'll see them with an object in relation to the page, but then also objects in relation to each other. And so I'll snap this to the center and I see those guides. But what if this was off center here? Well, it's still going to show me those guides for the rectangle itself. So they show those guides not only for when something is in relation to the page, but also objects in relation to each other. Okay, so if you click off anything, so now my background selected, I can click off anywhere, it's going to unselect. So you click on an object, reselects that object, you click on another one. But so also remember, click and drag, you can select multiple things, okay? So that's one way to select multiple things. You can also use shift click. So if I have something selected, I have this rectangle selected. If I hold down shift and then click on another object, now they're both selected. Now when they're both selected, I can move them around together. Well, when you have multiple objects selected, you can also group them together, and that can be handy. So if I click this group button up here, then suddenly I have both of these objects grouped. So you notice I clicked off of them, nothing is selected. Now when I click back on either one of them, it's automatically going to select them both because they're grouped together and I can move them around. So that's very handy and in more ways than you initially realize, because watch me ungroup these for a second. So now you see if I click on one, just that one thing is selected, right? So they're no longer grouped. And so now if I was going to come into this heading with the objects no longer grouped, and I decided that I wanted to add a line 2 and then even a line 3, you see how that spills out of that background box. Now, maybe I want it to be contained in the box. Well, I could come and then expand it down, but that is something that grouping will actually help you with. So I'm going to hit Control Z, which is just the keyboard shortcut to undo a command. So that would be Command Z on a Mac, Control Z on Windows. So Control Z once, and then I'll just do it a couple more times to get rid of that text. Now, we saw what happened when I just added those lines. Watch this. I'm going to select them both. I'm going to group them. And now watch what happens this time with them grouped. You can still go in when objects are grouped and work on an individual element. So I can still go in and add more text. But when I do, watch. Line 2, line 3. So when you group text in a background element like this, like a rectangle, and the text is contained within that, then when you add a new line, the background object is going to automatically expand to, so it totally contains your text. So that is really cool. You can imagine how this would be handy, and it does save you time. Now, of course, you can always ungroup it, and you can always come in and you can resize that. But just know when you do have them grouped together, then they will expand, so the text will stay contained within that background element. Okay, that's pretty cool, but let's move on to some new tricks. So I'm just going to go ahead and delete this text for now. I'm going to resize this rectangle down so it's pretty small. So there we go. And what I'm going to do now is just drag out some copies. Now you can copy something by using the keyboard shortcut Control-C or Command-C, which you probably know from different programs that will copy something. So it will copy this selected object. And then if you hit Command-C or Command-V or Control-V, that is the command for paste. And so I can paste out other objects. But there's actually an even easier way to do it. With something highlighted like this, if you just hold down the Alt key and then just drag out, it's going to automatically drag out. Now, when I do that, you'll notice that I start to see these blue guides, and Canva starts to give me a measurement of the distance between the objects. So now there's 0.6 between those. If I drag another one out, and I look for that 0.6 again, that can be very helpful because that can allow me to evenly space something. Now, Canva does not always give those smart guides, but a lot of times when you're positioning things like that, it does give you those smart guides, so that can be helpful. But as with the case with other things, a lot of the times there's an even better way. So let me just reposition these all over the page. Now you can imagine if I wanted to drag them out and use that smart guide, I could get them all positioned, very nicely with that snapping that we've seen in those smart guides that we just saw. But once again, there is an even better way. So imagine that I wanted something to span from this side of the page to this side of the page, but I wanted those to be in line and evenly spaced. Okay, so if I select all of these, then I can come down here under this position, or up here I should say under position, and then you have all of these options for aligning things. So if I wanted them to be left aligned, everything could move to the left of the page. But in this case, I want them to be spaced evenly horizontally. So I'll do that. And then I want them to all be sort of center aligned, or middle aligned, I should say here. And so if I do that, boom, they all snap together. Now, yeah, if I had chosen top or bottom, they would have actually done the same thing because these are the same size. But let me just size a couple of these differently, and I'll actually get rid of a few here because we don't need all of these. But let me just make a couple little different, just so we can see what this is doing. So if we go here and I come back under position, you can see that, so okay, now the middles are aligned. This is what top aligned would look like. This is what bottom aligned would look like. So these are all very self-explanatory, full around in here. But this can be very helpful when you're looking to space objects quickly. And of course, alignment and things like that can be very crucial in design work. So this is very helpful to have this panel here. But let me just delete them all for a second. I just want to show you that when you have multiple objects like that selected, then you're positioning objects in relation to each other. But if you were just to have one object selected, then this menu changes and then you're positioning things based on the page, right? So the middle of the page, the top of the page, the bottom of the page, the right of the page, the left of the page. And so of course with the smart guides, this isn't that hard to do without this, but it is just another handy menu and another way of doing things. Oftentimes there are multiple ways to do things in Canva. Okay, welcome back to this Canva Quick Start Challenge. In this video, we are going to be looking at how you precisely position things like text within Canva. Okay, so anything on screen, when you click in it and you double click and you're inside the text box, now you have these handles on the side where you can actually adjust the size of the text. And of course, how the text repositions itself, or whether it does, depends on what the alignment is here. So now because it's center aligned, it's always going to move to stay in the center of that text box. But of course, if I had it something like left aligned like here, then you would always have this edge anchored to the left. So as I drag out on this side, nothing happens. Of course, if I drag that on this side, it would move with me as I drag it out because it is now left aligned. So that is just crucial to understand where the text is going to be anchored, how it's going to reposition, because that's going to be crucial when you're trying to line up different text elements or trying to line up the text with other elements in your design. So if I wanted to line up this heading here in this box down below, I could drag it down here. Of course, I see that it is currently behind in the layer stack, so remember that trick. Control plus bracket key to bring it forward. And so then if I wanted to center align it, remember it is center aligning in this box here. So I could just drag it over. And now that it's center aligned and that the size of the text box is the distance of the box, I know that it is center aligned in that box. Now, let me just grab it. You can also sometimes have it snap into place and there the centers are aligning. But keep in mind, if you have a different size text box here, then suddenly when it snaps into place, it's going to depend on your alignment because this is center aligned, it lines up. But if I had this like left aligned and then I was using this, it's going to snap in a different place, right? Because of that alignment. So the alignment is very important when you're trying to line things up, and you need to pay attention whether you're trying to left align things, right align things. So just know that this alignment up here is going to be very crucial. All right, let me bring this back up here. And so I will, let's say I wanted to center align it across the whole page here at the top of my page. So a couple things come into play. So I could center align it here. Of course, there's center line, and I could have it spaced all the way like this, so I know that it's in the center of the page. Now, if I didn't have that and my text box was smaller here, I could also just grab it and wait until I see that snapping line. But again, if for some reason my text was left aligned and my text box was bigger, and I try to do that center line snapping now, then look where it's snapping. It's snapping based on the total area of this text box. So it's not actually lining up in the center of the page because you're left aligned. So you do have to make sure you get this alignment right here. Okay, so now with this lined up, this is where we get into really precisely positioning things. If I wanted to center align the subheading under the heading above, it's not that hard because they are both currently center aligned. And so really I'm just dragging them out until I get that snap line like I'm getting right here, and then it's going to align perfectly, no problem. But what if I wanted to align this subheading just under the word heading over here, or maybe even tucked in, since you have this G that underhangs the line here, sort of tucked in here? Well, I could just drag it over by grabbing it. So let me get the arrows here, and I can just use that little handle, and I could bring it over like this, but that would not be a good way to do it because it is center aligned here. So now if I try to scale it up and make it a little bigger, you can see that everything is sliding, and I'm no longer keeping that alignment that I wanted right under the end there. So if you're ever in a situation like this, you got to think about on which side you want to anchor the text. Well, I really want to anchor this right side of the text here. So then when I scale up, it's going to scale up and keep this side anchored. So I would just come under here and I'm going to anchor it, right align it. And so now I know with it right aligned, it is anchored on that right side. I can use this handy little feature here to drag it around. And that's where it's snapping, but it's not quite what I want, where I want it. So remember, you can use those little arrow keys just to nudge it. So I'm just nudging it over. So now it really feels to me like it's really underneath that end there. And then as I size it up and down, I do so from this side, and this is going to stay anchored. Now, if I want to make the space narrow between the words, if I drag from this side, it's coming up and it's getting narrower. However, if I want to keep that top spacing, I can drag down from the bottom, and I'm maintaining that top spacing, and it's dragging out this way. So all these little choices about which control handles you use, it's going to make it crucial. It's going to make it very easy, I should say. Those are crucial decisions to get things spaced exactly as you want them. And now I have that space very nicely under the subheading there, under the heading. Now, let's say I want the text to be a little smaller, but I still want it to span that same distance. Well, you can play with letter spacing. So if I come in here and first I'm going to make my font choice, and so I want my subheading, let's say I do want it to be sized like that. Well, I could use the same resize handle now, but if I do, it's going to once again scale up my text, and I don't want that. So instead, I'll just come under letter spacing, and you can fool around with letter spacing and start to add in letter spacing and size it out that way. So all these are just the little tricks that you have that are crucial for really positioning things, and positioning and aligning things. Sometimes those are crucial parts of your design. So knowing all these tricks is going to be really helpful to you. Now, here's one more thing I want to say about precise positioning. I think I have this aligned pretty nicely, but it looks like maybe the A could slide over even a little bit more. So I could come back under spacing, but if for some reason I can't get it quite right, you can come in here under this letter spacing, and you can add incremental decimal values just to make very, very subtle adjustments. The same thing applies with font size. So if I come in here under font size and you drop this down, it shows 32, 36, 42. Of course, you can type in manually all the values in between, so 37, 38, 39. And again, once again, you can even add in decimal values. So if you just wanted to make this ever so slightly bigger, 36.5, you could do that, and it's going to make that subtle adjustment. Now, this may not seem like a huge deal, but sometimes you really are trying to be super precise and you want to get it lined up exactly. And the only way to do it is going to be if you know all these little tricks. And remember, you can use these decimal values. All right, so that's just a little bit more to really help you just lock in the fundamentals of Canva, because all these little things don't seem like a big deal, but what they do is they add up to a really smart. Let's talk about grids and frames, because they can be a really useful tool, but I think not everybody understands all the different ways you can use them. So let's talk about them briefly, because I really think they're going to just help you get more comfortable in Canva and really change the amount of dynamic layouts you can create. So grids and frames you both find under the Elements tab, and each have their own category. I had grids open recently, so let me close that out so we can just see here are all the different elements, and you usually have grids and frames up near the top here. But so go ahead and I'll click this See All on frames. And frames are usually singular elements, and they usually have these decorative qualities to them. So you have things like regular circle shapes like that, but you also have things like this shape here. You have other ones that are just really decorative like this one here. And anytime you have a frame like this, and you'll see this background like this, it means you can drag and drop a photo, and it will be contained within the frame. Think of it sort of like a photo frame. So if I go under my Photos tab now, I can take pictures and I can drag them within the frames here. And it's going to mask out the rest of that area and just show what the frame area is. Now, anytime you do that, you can double click to get inside of the frame, and then you can do things like reposition it. You can also scale it up if you wanted to scale this up so you're seeing a closer up image. And then when you're done, you can either click outside of it like this, or another way to do what I just did would be just to click on it once so you see the blue box, and then instead of double clicking, you just come up here under crop. I'm not going to talk about filter and adjust right now in this quick start class, but I will go under this crop, and then once again I'm back in here You can make those adjustments, scale it up and down, reposition, go ahead and click done. So that's how you can put something into a frame and reposition it within the frame. And of course, as you move your frame around, it moves with it and you can put it wherever you want in your design. However, those are frames. When you get into grids, you get into even more powerful tool in terms of controlling your layout, I think. So let's get rid of this and I'll show you what I mean. So now we're going to come back under elements again. This time instead of frames, let's look at grids and hit see all. So instead of seeing all those different shapes, we basically just have rectangles here, right? But we see a lot of them are more than just one. Here's the default one. And I'm going to tell you, I almost exclusively use this one. Sometimes I'll use some of these other ones, but I use this more than anything else, and I'll show you why in a minute. Let me click delete on that, and then you'll see sometimes though you have multiple columns, or sometimes you have columns and rows together. So this would be 2 columns with 1 picture here, and then 2 going down in this column, 2 rows. So what this does is allows you to start to build a layout on screen. I think a lot of people just think about dragging photos within here because you can only drag a photo. You can't drag an element or text in here. However, you can use it to position those items, and really using grids as a layout tool is really where the power lies, and I'm going to show you that in a minute. So first, obviously, the same thing applies where you can drag photos in like this, so it's no different than the frames we looked at. You can drag things in, you can double click to get in there, you can do repositioning and scaling, things like that. All that is the same between frames and grids. Basically, a grid is just multiple frames together. Again, click done, boom. However, I want to encourage you to think of grids more than just this tool where you can drag in photos. I want you to start to think like a graphic designer. So again, when you want to delete a whole grid like this, I can click on this and I could click delete and just delete that one image, or if I click delete grid here, it gets rid of the whole thing. Now let me go back for a second. So let me go back under elements, and now I'm back under my grids here. I want you to start to think about your layout, and if you study things like magazines, you'll start to see that they almost always have an underlying layout with a number of grids and columns that are just giving structure to the design. Now, you may look down here and you may say, okay, I want to design something that's 3 columns wide, and you might find this here. Or I want to design something that's 2 columns wide, and I could use this here. However, if you're saying something like, I want to design something that's 5 rows, and in one of the rows I want 2 columns, you're going to start to have trouble finding what you want here. But what I want you to realize is you can create absolutely any layout you need by combining these different elements. And I'm going to show you exactly what I mean. Let's imagine that I knew I was going to want to have a layout that was 2 columns and 3 rows. Well, I could scroll down here and maybe I would find it. However, I could also just use any combination of these to build out what I want. Let me show you what I mean. So here, for example, we have the one that is 3 columns. So if I were to choose this 3 columns, I could do that. But first, I'm going to choose this one here. I'm going to choose the one that's 2 rows because I know I want this to be actually 2 columns across the page. And so what I'll do now is I'm just going to get it positioned exactly up there. I'm going to get it positioned exactly so it's fitting exactly to my page. I don't want that space in the middle. However, if you did want to control the spacing between these two, you could. There are a couple different ways you could do that. You could use this spacing. So in other words, under the spacing here, I could say that I know I want this spacing in the center gutter of my design there. I could do that. Or you can take it all the way out and get rid of the spacing. And then something that's powerful is that you can come in here and you can change the background color of these individually. So I will make this one white, and this one over here, I'm just going to make a gray color, something so it just stands out as separate from this. And you can adjust opacity up and down, all these things, so you can go like that. Now, what I want to stress to you is that you might do this sometimes just as a visual aid, not necessarily because you want these to be the final colors within your design, within this page. You might, but you can also just use it as a visual cue. And so then something that is very important is locking. if you lock anything, then you can still select it, but I can't accidentally move it. I can't adjust the transparency. I can't make any of those adjustments because it's locked. It's set. I have it protected. So this lock icon here and turning this on and off is very important, because that's going to be something you want to utilize when you want to lock things down and protect them. But what you can start to now do is use multiple grids together to really start to build out your layout. So for example, I could add these 3 columns here. Again, I'm going to position it there. I'll drag it over here. I'm going to get it to snap to that center line. I'll get it to snap to the bottom. I'm going to get rid of the spacing here. And so now I'll go in and I'm going to go ahead and add some colors to these, just to give myself, again, a visual reference. So I'll make that color. I'll make this that color, and then I'll make this lighter color here. Then I'll take the transparency of the whole thing and take it down a little bit. And again, these aren't the colors I'm going to have in my final design. I'm just using these as visual cues. And I see I got these close together. This I wanted to keep as that color there. So I have that visual separation, and then I can take this whole thing and I can Alt copy it over to this side. And so now I start to have these 2 columns with 3 rows in each column. But then maybe up here in this top thing, that's going to be where I'm going to add in my headline. So I'll drop a headline into there. Again, I want to have it positioned in here. So maybe, again, you could do something where, here, let me get rid of this for a second before I even do this. Let me get rid of that one. So maybe I want to have a consistent margin across all these. So I could use grids to show me those margins that I was going to be maintaining. So I'll show you that. Let me just go back under these elements, back under grids. I'm just going to grab this single one this time, and I'll position it. Whoops. So sometimes what happens is when it puts something in here, it will put it in the back by default. So again, and this is why you want to start locking down things. Also can be very important. I don't think I locked down these other 2s, but let me just hit the tab key to cycle through my elements. And actually now it's cycling through these different grid boxes because I'm in that. So I'm going to get outside of that, and I'm just going to grab this whole thing, lock it down, grab this whole thing, lock it down. And now I just want to try to use the tab key to select that one in the back. I've lost that, but so what I can do now is let me unlock this. Let me position and actually send this backward. And then let me take this one over here. I'm going to unlock it for a second. So again, unlock it so you can change the position. I'm going to send that one backward. I just had to do that to bring this to the front. So now I should be able to select this. And then once I do that, I'm actually going to lock these again. So lock and lock. Again, once you have things positioned in the way you want, it's a good idea to lock them down because you're just building out this visual framework. And so then I'm going to take this one now and reposition it. I'll reposition it there. I'll reposition it to that center line. And then with it exactly centered like that, I'm going to take my Alt key and drag from the corner. Actually, I don't have to do the Alt key in this case, the Shift key. Nope. I'm going to try that again. Yeah, so drag from the corner and then Alt, there we go, Alt key, just so I can maintain proportions on all scale and from all sides. And so if I go something like this, I could do something like that. And I'm basically using that just so I have these sort of margins, right? And so what I actually would want to do probably is something like this. So I would probably want to take the whole thing up, and I'd probably want to take something like, and say, okay, I want my margins to be like this. And so then I could even take that and I could drag it down, and then I could take all of these, shift, shift, shift. It's not letting me shift. I wasn't hitting shift. There we go. Shift, shift, and then Alt to drag all these, a copy. So again, I'm using all these keyboard shortcuts. We've gone over these keyboard shortcuts. Alt, and you click an object and drag it out. You create a copy. Shift plus clicking on something, you can select multiple items. So I'm using these together. I'm locking things down. I'm just using all of these as ways to really come in here and position things. So now with all of these, I could come in here and I could say, I'm going to make these white, and we will go ahead and take all of these and actually make me come in here now that I have these, and with the transparency of each of these, just drag them down a little bit. So again, I'm just using all of this to create these visual cues, and I could have done this before I copied so I didn't have to do this for all these, but just creating these visual cues so it really gives me sort of, you know, this layout that I can use. Now, some of these things I didn't have to do the way I did, and I forgot to color these, but that's fine. I could just go white, white, white. And once you get into this, you'll start to know what you do and don't have to do, because some things you can position automatically without doing all this. But if you really want to have a complex framework, you could start to use things like this. And so now if I come in here and say, okay, my title is going to be up here. So let me add a heading again. So I'm going to add a header, and I'm going to position that so it's centered within this box. And the one thing that grids will do for you is, remember, objects will position relative to each other and relative to the page. So if you have an object in here, it really lets you position something relative to that object, and so it really lets you start to control spacing a lot better. So again, if I drag this down and get it positioned relative to the object there, so now I have it right in the center there. And then I'm going to come over to this page here. Lorem ipsum is where just a tool I use for generating dummy text, just so you can see something in a design without having it be distracting, or without having to come up with all the content on the fly. So something like that. And then if you have a little bit of body text, what I'm going to do is come in here and I'm going to position this body text so that it's, again, contained within this box, because that gives me my margins. And then I'm going to come in here and Control A, Control V. I'm going to change this down to something like that. And then I have that in there, right? So now I have that position there. And again, all of this is just giving me these placeholders. And so once I'm done and I come back in here and I have this thing locked, well, I can unlock and I can start to delete stuff, right? And so then suddenly I'm just using that as an underlying tool for my layout. And here I might come in here and I might say I really wanted that to be justified completely. And then over here within this side, I may say, okay, well, what I actually wanted here was to have 3 photos across the top. So let me go back under my elements and into my grid. And I understand this is becoming a little bit of a long example, but I just really want to lock into you how powerful these grid tools can be once you start to use them, not just as ways to hold photos, but also as a way to control your layout. I'm actually going to end up doing both here. So let me see here. So 3 columns, I want something that's 3 in here, but I might just use 1 square thing. And again, by default, it adds it to the back. I don't want it in the back, so I'm going to come position. I'm going to make sure I bring that to the front. So I'm going to bring it all the way to the front. I don't think by default it always adds it to the back, but it's doing that for some reason now. So I'm going to drag this now. And again, I get these cues as I'm doing it, these little width and height. So if I wanted to try to make this as an exact square, I would just drag it down until I see 2.6 and 2.6. And then if I do an alt drag, not an alt drag, let me try that again. Then if I were to use, let me get 2.6, then if I use shift combined with this, then it's going to constrain those proportions, I think, right? Yeah, but I didn't have it exactly right, but so it's losing it when it gets a little bigger, but I can always make those small adjustments. So anyways, come in here, something like this, and let's say I wanted 3 of these, 1, 2, 3, and then if I wanted to get them so they're precisely positioned, so I could go shift, and I could come in here and position, just make sure that I have them horizontally spaced the way I want, and then shift, I'm going to grab these and just make sure that they're right in the center of this box here, like that. And so again, just another design element on my page, and then you could use them the way you use traditional grids. So maybe I am going to put photos in there. And so I'm just coming in here, boom, boom, boom. And then again, I might have text down on this side too, or maybe you're going to have more images. Maybe these are going to be larger photos. So again, if I come back under my grids, back over to elements, grid, boom, and I'm going to use this grid icon, but I'm going to bring it to the front, again, Let's take it down. And again, if you're ever resizing something like this and you need to see through it, you could come here and mess with the transparency just so you could see what's behind it as well, right? But I'm gonna leave it all the way up because it will snap. You see how this will snap to what I've created in the background. So then Alt, boom, drag it down. There's my final one. Again, just go back over the photos and maybe I'm dragging in this photo and maybe I'm dragging in this photo. So anyways, this is just an example here. And then of course I would come back in here and I would unlock this. And I'm throwing out this and then any other underlying grids I have here, I would want to get rid of as well. So again, let me unlock, let me delete. And so now I've gotten rid of everything in the background, but I have this structure and I have this layout that was possible because I used those grids not just as a tool, as a frame for photos, but also as a design tool for creating layouts. So that's grids and frames, and grids can be very powerful once you start to use them as a way to just have visual cues that let you create a structured layout. All right, so I hope you enjoyed this and I hope you gained a lot from it. Thank you so much for watching. In this lesson, I just wanted to quickly go over some tools and resources that you might find very helpful as you work with Canva. Things that are going to give you inspiration and help you out when you get stuck. So the first of these is canva.com colors. So if you go to canva.com colors in your web browser, then you're going to get these tools that all are going to help you when you're sort of stuck picking colors that are going to make sense for a project. And so we'll jump through these tools really quickly. I'm just going to read them on screen here and we'll jump over there and see what they do real quick. So color palette generator, it lets you upload a photo and then it'll take that photo and it'll pull out colors from that photo and give you a starting palette. So I'm going to jump over here real quick. We'll see if it loads up with a photo here. And so what you would do is, so if you had like a photo of fall foliage or something or nice fall colors and you wanted to pull out those colors and generate a palette from the colors, you could use this tool here. So that might be really helpful as a starting point for a project in your color themes. The other ones are the same sort of ideas about picking colors that make sense for your project. So next one, color palette ideas. It just gives you a whole bunch of color palettes that you can look through and choose from, and you can see the hex codes if you click through on these. So if I click through on one of these here, and then right here it has all these hex codes which you can use to get those colors within Canva. Now if I go back here one screen, you can also search by a color, a theme, or a keyword, so it gives you lots of ways for coming up with color palettes that might make sense for your project. Going back to this main screen here, the color wheel. So if you're not familiar with color theory, you might have to get a little familiar with that, and I'll talk about that in one of my additional resources here coming up. But what this will do is it lets you pick a starting color, and then it will come in here and find the complementary color, or you can find analogous colors, triadic colors. I'm not going to get into what each of these means, and you don't need to understand everything about color theory, but starting to understand a little bit about color theory will help you figure out, you know, what colors play well together, what colors look well together, and then you can start to make smarter color choices within your Canva projects. So going back here to one last option, color meanings. Again, really trying to stay on brand and reach your audience and deliver the message effectively. Sometimes understanding colors, what they mean, their significance, what they mean in different cultures. And so if you come in here and you search for a color and you really want to learn more about a color, it will tell you a little bit of history and cultural significance about this color. So it's just a cool way to learn more about colors. Okay, so along those lines, if you're new to graphic design, I mean, Canva is really about graphic design, creating graphics that convey a message or a meaning and communicate effectively for you and your business. And so it would make sense if you don't have a graphic design background. You don't have to spend hours and hours doing this, but just bringing yourself slowly up to speed a little bit more about some of the principles of graphic design is really going to help you create better designs. And so a site that's really great for learning some of the basics is this edu.gcfglobal.org. And this is a free learning site where you can learn lots of different things here. And again, it's got this EN here for English, but if I get rid of this, you can see you can just type in edu.gcfglobal.org. and it'll bring you to this home page here. And once you're on this home page here, you have this topics drop down. If you just go under here and you go under graphic design, there's lots of other cool stuff you can learn on here too. But this graphic design learning series is one that I think if you're somewhat new to design, it's going to be really helpful, and it's going to be something that really pushes your work in Canva to a better place, even farther forward, so you're more effectively creating graphics within Canva. Because even once you learn all the tools, then you want to start effectively learning some of the design principles that are going to work in unison with your knowledge of the tools, and you're going to create better and better designs. So this is just a learning series that goes through basics of typography, color, layout, composition, images, fundamentals of design, branding, identity, and these are all very short little learning series. But let me just click over on typography for a little bit. So it goes over all these things about typography, decisions you're going to be faced with, things you may want to do, and so it's really cool. And you have also really cool videos. They have some really engaging, cool videos. They're easy to watch. I think they're usually about 10 minutes long, 5 to 10 minutes, and you can really learn a lot quickly. So that would be a good supporting thing for you to do to go along with your work in Canva. Another tool that comes directly from Canva and that goes hand in hand with, smart graphic design principles is this canva.com font combinations. So usually you don't want more than 1 or 2 fonts in a given design, but if you start to use fonts together, sometimes they're not going to play well together. And if you sort of get stuck, what this font combination site lets you do is you just come in here and you select a starting font, and then it's going to go through and it's going to give you examples of fonts that pair well with that font. So again, canva.com font combinations, and you choose a starting font, and then it's going to go through and it's going to find fonts that really play well and work well with that font. So it's really cool, and it can save you a lot of time when you're just looking for that right font pairing to start your project. You want to get into the design, and you don't want to spend lots and lots of time going through those font options in Canva. It's nice that they give you hundreds and hundreds of fonts, but it can also be overwhelming. So this just takes the process and simplifies it, gets rid of that headache. You can choose your starting font, and then you can easily find a font that's going to pair well with that font. One final tool I'll mention that I find very helpful is just this color eyedropper. And so what this is a extension that I use within my Chrome browser, and then I can use it to pull directly colors within a photo while I'm in Canva, which isn't a tool that they have natively built in. So here you would just come to the Chrome web store and you would look for a color pick eyedropper is what this particular tool is. But now since I have that installed as a Chrome extension, I now have this little icon up here. You can see I have a lot of extensions installed, but this one here is this color pick eyedropper. So let me just open up a Canva window real quick, and I'm going to show you how this works. Okay, so here I am within Canva, and I've just grabbed the template here and dragged it over to start with this template. Now let's say I really want to use the color of this sweater here, this shirt, and I really want to mirror that up here in my text. Well, so if I click on my text here and I come under the text and I go to the color, new color, the document colors, Canva will pull the document colors, but it's only pulling the white that I have as a background and the black that I have a background. It's not going to find that color that's embedded within a photo, right? But if you have this color pick extension installed, I can click on that and I get, oops, I clicked on the wrong one. So this color pick eyedropper right here, if I click on that, then I can start to hover over my image, and it's going to let me click on any pixel here within my background, my screen here, and pick that exact color. So if I click on that, it's going to give me the color hex code. I can just hit Control C to copy that. And now if I'm under my text here, so let me highlight this text, and I want to change the color of that text. I just had that up. And then if you just paste the color hex, which you just grabbed with that extension, into here, it's going to find that color, and then you can easily change to that. Now, that's not standing out enough of the background, so if I did do something like this, I would probably do something like select this, and I would just come up here maybe to duplicate that, and then I would change maybe the color of this one back to a black. So let's just do something like that. And of course now I want this one to be in the back, so I would just go position and I would slide it backwards. But so now I'm utilizing that orange color here in my design, and I was able to pull it directly from the photograph just by using this color pick extension. So these are just some of the resources that I think will be very helpful to you as you get into using Canva, and they're going to save you time and they're going to help you create better and better designs. So good luck, and I'll see you in the next lesson.